So I think like one of the biggest things when it comes to winning around the holidays, just looking at things differently, right? Now, I used to be the coach in the past and was like this myself, where I thought, okay, well, we either have to be like super duper strict around the holidays and eat in the exact way that we know we should in order to reach our goals, and that's the only way it will work. Well, I think a lot different now today, and it really starts with some of the main talking points I want to talk about really fast today, which will cover remembering what you're celebrating and who you're celebrating it with. There's a big reason why I make that the first point. The before, during, and after. We'll talk about grabbing the essentials first and then training advice around the holiday season. So these are kind of like the biggest things I see myself having conversations about with clients and just with people who have questions. So let's start with the first topic, remembering what you're celebrating and who you're celebrating with. Now, we've all heard me talk about this a ton. Diet and exercise is fantastic, but relationships also matter a lot. I don't know if you all know this, but during my like building my business up and just myself and learning about what I call now unbreakable foundations, I was studying lifestyle a bunch. And something I learned with lifestyle and with how relationships play a role is that when we have poor relationships, it's actually looked at as just as bad as some of the worst like health markers we could look at as obesity, being a chronic like somebody who chronically smokes cigarettes, or if you also have an alcohol addiction. Like, it can be that bad for your health to have poor relationships. So if staying super duper strict and all that stuff is going to make the relationships in your life that much harder and it's going to ruin the celebration, mm, I caution you on trying to be too strict about things. Now, of course, there's times and places when maybe we need to, if we have a specific event coming up and there's a date that we have to stick to, I get it. But we're talking long term, big picture. And I really just want to hit it home with just talking about this first, especially with the holidays that are coming up. I know like I got a ton of birthdays around this time of year. So for me, it's really important to talk about this before we even talk about the rest. So just remember what you're celebrating and who you're celebrating with, right? I think that's a big thing to just take the mental pressure off of the event itself and to give yourself grace right off the bat. Now, to make sure we don't go off the rails when we give ourselves grace, comes the next couple points. So, the before, during, and the after. I feel like this is not talked about quite enough. Now, I always hear people talking about like what you can do during and all that stuff, and that's great, right? But if let me let a Kimmy in real quick. So with this, the reason why I harp on this so much is focusing on like what have you been doing this entire time? Really ingrain that in. Okay, I've been working with my food tracking. I've been doing better at getting my protein intake. I've been better at meal prepping, right? We've been doing all these skills that have built us up to this point. The reason why I say this is because one thing that I noticed slip in myself and in clients first around the holiday season isn't even allowing the sweets and everything in too soon or too much. It's actually falling off of the plan at the very beginning or before we even get to the holidays. So just remember, you put in a ton of work, you've built a bunch of skills, right? Like everybody's doing their own path. I get that, but everybody also has built a ton of skills. So remember, what have I been focusing on? How do I continue to focus on that? Now, of course, sometimes we got to focus on what matters most. So if tracking is super stressful and all that stuff, okay, as you've all heard me say, I'm not a big tracker myself. But if you're not, okay, set some rules up for yourself for the holiday season. Not okay, I'm going to make sure I get 3 meals in. Those 3 meals are going to consist of this, this, and this, right? Have some standards for yourself to stay on track because if you're anything like me, this holiday season can get insanely busy and I can let my diet just fall off way too easy i.e., not necessarily eating a bunch of junk food, but just not eating in general and letting all the work I've put in this long kind of just fall to the wayside. Now, the second part, the during. How many days are in a year? 365 last time I checked, right? If it's a leap year, we could be looking at a little bit different. But if we think about that and we have in mind, okay, I've been dialed in, working with Devontae, doing all these things for X amount of time, right? Now the holiday season comes up. Okay, we got a couple days in there. Let's say if we add it all up with like how I celebrate the holidays, at least, maybe we have like a week's worth of time in these next couple months where eh, that might not be completely on point. I might be enjoying a little bit more sweets here and there than I usually do. But if I zoom that out to the 365 days, yes, not every day is going to be perfect out of that span of time, but that also helps relieve some mental debt, at least for me, that okay, cool. This isn't as important as I'm probably putting weight to it. Now, of course, we can have those moments where we go pretty hard and we go over the top. I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. But I think just having this in mind helps you just kind of be like, oh, okay, it's all right. Like there's a lot of time on the back end after this to also do right. And I don't even like saying do right, just to do what's going to make me feel better about my decisions. And I think that comes all around with just being like planning and being prepared. I know I've talked to a lot of you, and if we haven't had this conversation yet, we definitely will. But around the holidays, I love to use calories as a way of just kind of being sneaky here, right? So, like, if we know we're going to eat more on a certain holiday, well, that week before, that's a great time to plan ahead and be like, okay, I know I'm probably going to eat a little bit more than I usually would on this weekend. Maybe it's 500, 600 calories more than we usually would because we're enjoying ourselves. Okay. Well, if we're going to be about 1,000 calories over on our average on the weekend, how can we adjust during the week? Well, you take that 1,000, divide it by five for the other remaining days, and then now we can adjust our calorie load to have a little bit less during the week and have a bigger allotment on the weekend. But if we look at that big picture view, right, we're looking at the averages, it all evens out. So now we're planning, we're preparing for the before, the during, and then the after. And the after really goes into not going off the rails toward like, okay, I ate all this food. Now I need to cut everything out. Everything needs to go. I'm not going to eat for a certain amount of, this is me at least. I would just like fast for 2 days after I went hard on sweets and everything, thinking that was the right step for me. Maybe it is if my gut's a little messed up, but most of the time, probably didn't need that. I probably could have got back to my food, normal meals, and been just fine and felt a lot better in the gym with my training. And that's really what leads me into grabbing the essentials first, right? So, as I just said, the before, during, and after. So, when you think about grabbing the essentials, I would always do this before, right? Like, I'm not necessarily going to be at my grandma's Thanksgiving that's coming up or whatever. And she makes some bomb food. And I'm not going to say like they're not protein focused at all. And if that's the essential thing I'm looking for when I go enjoy my time there, I'm probably not going to go shoot for that thing first. I'm probably going to go for what makes me feel like I'm a little kid again at grandma's house, right? Like it's a nice time for me. I don't do it very much. So let's make sure I just focus on the essentials beforehand. I know I've talked to quite a bit of people about this, but breakfast, when I know I'm going to go into this is where I'm loading up a breakfast with lean protein. So I'm having like maybe a couple whole eggs, but then a bunch of egg whites. Or maybe I'm having a meat that morning just to keep everything down. Yeah, of course, Marlene. Thank you for stopping by. And for me, now it's like, okay, if I can do this and I can set my diet up in a way to where I have this allotment throughout the rest of the day, I'm already winning. If I can get 50 to 60 grams of protein in at the beginning of my day, plus I keep fats down, and then maybe we're going over there around lunchtime, I have a protein shake right before I go. So now I'm sitting around 75, 80 grams of protein, maybe a little bit more. I already know I'm off to the races to be better off than if I just ate my normal meal and kind of let my day go. And then boom, I'm trying to play catch up at the end of the day. This also helps me control my cravings when I'm going into that situation. For me, I've noticed if I don't have that bigger meal, if I don't load up on protein, I don't get those essentials in first. I end up going to that thing already pretty hungry. And then all of a sudden, the second I walk in, I smell those baked goods. It's a wrap. It's done. I'm like, all right, cool. Cookies, here we come. Like there's no turning back. And it seems to be the case for a lot of people. So if we can do that, and then also know that I have your back. The community has your back. Like we are all here to help. So sending a message, like I've done this multiple times, just sending a message and just being like, well, I'm having a kind of hard time with all these sweets right now. You might hear that. I am too. And just even sending that alone is enough to not send you off the deep end. Now, hey, having a couple cookies here and there, like I love that. But we all know what it feels like to kind of go over that limit of what we probably should have done. It's different for everybody. But I also do want to say, enjoy the damn treats, right? Like, do the work beforehand, be dialed in now, plan ahead of time, do the work before, so then you can plan for the during, and then do the work after so you can enjoy the time with family celebrating these things. And I think that takes me into the last thing I want to talk about, and that's training advice for the holidays. This is where I see most of us take a misstep and go too hard. I'm very guilty of this myself, especially after the holiday season. If drinking was involved and all this other things, and I just think I have to go so hard to just work away all those things I just did. Well, it's not the case, right? Like if we think of what we talked about, the 365 days, and if I just did these things a couple times out of the year, I don't need to go and drive myself into the ground to try to reverse those effects, right? So do your best, number one, around the holidays, not to inconvenience others. I was terrible about this. Maybe not everybody else is, but I was the person who was so worried about my training having to happen on even a holiday day, if it was, just because it was my routine, to where I would inconvenience my wife, I would inconvenience my kids, right? And it would just make everything harder for everybody else. So you can do it if you won't. But I'm going to say now, from a personal experience, it definitely feels a lot better to rearrange things to not have that be the case and still stay on your plan if you want to. Like, I'm very serious about my training. I love to still stay on track with things, but I've learned to adjust so I don't inconvenience others, because that just ends up making my life harder and then makes everything else harder. When it comes to training, also make sure you remember how many days are in a year. 365, right? Like we have the back end of this year after the holidays to still put in work and everything in the right manner. So we don't have to go full send, right? It's going to probably cause the opposite of what you really want. For most people, we're trying to either lose fat, build muscle, get to just healthy hormone profile even. And if we're in our head about the decision we made over the holidays and that transfers over into our gym decisions, and maybe we start doing stuff extra outside of the plan, we start running more, we start going extra hard in the gym, well, now we're just accumulating more and more and more and more and more stress. And as we know, the body's an adaptation machine. So yes, it's going to adapt to the stress load you have. But if we're trying to make changes, we're trying to gain some muscle, we're trying to lose fat, right? We're trying to change a hormone profile, whatever it might be, the body's not going to want to do those things as easily if we're extremely stressed. So remember, after the holidays, just get back on routine. Just get right. What I like to do is set myself up for success. I set a training day up right after the holiday, but I don't go kill myself. I go in there, I just go in, I do the same thing I would any other week. I touch the weights I did the week prior. I try to progress that a little bit. And if I'm feeling a little bit weak, well, that's okay. I'm just going to take my time through the training. And I know I got another day coming. I got another week coming. I got a whole nother month ahead of me to feel great with my training again. So that's kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about. Oh, also, unpopular opinion before I end it with this and open up for any questions. Unpopular opinion, just throw the crap away. Like, I have so many leftovers in my house for whatever reason all the time, all this candy, and me and the wife looked at each other the other day and we're like, yeah, let's just throw the shit away or donate it. Like, two easy options. So don't think you can't do that. Of course, I talked to my kids about it. I didn't just like do it, but as adults too, like before I even had kids, I was the person who'd always just be like, yeah, give me the cake, or I'll take it with me. But then if it's just sitting there, I'm the type of person, at least for me, where if it's there, it's a lot harder to say no to that thing if I open my fridge and I see it. So if you're one of those people, don't be afraid to go hit some people up. Like my wife hit up some moms on Facebook, was like, who wants some candy? Like, and some moms were like, oh, some teachers were like, oh, we'll take it and all this stuff. So there's ways to get rid of this stuff if you don't want to waste it. If you don't mind wasting it, don't feel bad throwing it out. That's kind of what I want to end it on today. That's how we're going to feel successful with the holiday season coming up.